Kelly, we're live.
Yes. Hi, good to see you again.
Likewise, welcome back.
2 weeks
So
fly by.
I know, right? I felt like it was last week. And per usual, I want to just say if anybody's on yet, and I won't know for just a split second here, I got to go and figure that part out. But anybody who has joined us, welcome. Thanks for joining. If you were here 2 weeks ago, we started talking about onboarding and retention. And the reason we did that together is because we agree that they're so interconnected, they're so intertwined, and so it just made sense. That being said, we did that and we tried to keep these to a half an hour, and we realized that we just barely scratched the surface on both. So we decided we're going to do a deep dive. Today, the focus is going to be on onboarding. And then 2 weeks from now, we're going to do a deep dive into retention. So thank you again for joining. If you're here watching with us, which again, I have no idea yet, welcome to our conversation about onboarding. I've got Kelly Sanchez, the head of talent acquisition at DigiCert. Kelly, thanks again for joining.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right. And anybody who has been here before knows that I got to put myself on mute, go kind of to a different screen and make sure that I can follow the conversation. If you are watching and you have any questions throughout this conversation about the onboarding process or some of the things that we're talking about today regarding onboarding, you can drop them into the comments and we'll address them in real time. So yeah, just if you maybe want to, do you have your cards? I don't.
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, so if you want to stall for us for a second here, I will go navigate away to another screen and I'll be right back.
Okay. All right. So yes, if you've been joining us, we usually do a question while Scotty is being tech guy over there. So this week's question: of all the vacations or trips you've taken, okay, I'm excited about this one. Which one exceeded your expectations the most? Oh, that is so hard. I don't know. So if you don't know me, I love to travel. I try to take one big trip a year somewhere. It's been really challenging with COVID, but my gut instinct comes to Russia. And it was because we went to the World Cup. So it was such a great experience and I loved every minute of it. My team, I'm from Peru. So yes, to all my Peruvians out there, it was so much fun. And Russia was so welcoming, such a beautiful country. Yeah. So if you ever want to talk travel, message me. But I would say that trip definitely exceeded my expectations.
So I don't have nearly as many options to choose from in terms of places that I've been. And in terms of what exceeded expectations, I mean, I had pretty high expectations for just about everywhere I've gone.
So why am I not surprised?
I think, maybe some people would think that this is silly. Like, yeah, of course it would be awesome. But I actually say that like what exceeded my expectations was South Florida. And I'm not talking about Miami Beach. I was not, I was not walking down, on the beach topless or anything. I was in Fort Lauderdale, but it was awesome. Like everything about the community there was really cool. I'm a hockey fan. I got to go watch the Florida Panthers play. And the seats were like ridiculously cheap because nobody cares. So yeah, I got to, watch. That's the only time maybe not the only time, but it's one of the few times I've seen an NHL hockey game, like from the lower bowl. So anyway, that's my answer. It's not nearly as sexy or awesome as Russia, but it's that's what it was. So,
but the funny thing is, it's like we were doing what we loved. I love football, soccer. You love hockey. So I think it's suiting. It works.
Very true. Very true. Yeah, indeed. All right. Well, again, hello. We've got a couple people on already. So, and one of them just popped in the comments. Hello back, Matt. Thanks so much for joining us. Like I mentioned, and I'll continue to kind of talk about it throughout this live stream. as we have other people join the conversation. I've got Kelly Sanchez, my bi-weekly conversation partner, with me here today. Kelly is the head of talent acquisition at DigiCert. So, you've got two career recruiters here, and our focus today, oh man, we're getting all sorts of nice comments. Thank you, Ashley. I agree with you that definitely applies to Kelly. Anyhow,
I like it.
Yeah, today we're going to talk about onboarding, and just to tee this up a little bit. 2 weeks ago, we talked about onboarding and retention because Kelly, we agree, right, that onboarding and retention are completely interconnected.
Yes.
You kind of can't do one well without the other. That being said, half an hour flew by. We realized we just scratched the surface. So we're going to revisit both of these topics. Today, we're going to focus on a deep dive on onboarding. Next time we're live, which is 2 weeks from now, same place, same time, just 2 weeks from now, we'll talk about retention and we'll do a deep dive there. So I think just in terms of what that's going to look like, we've got a little bit more structure around the conversation today, but I do want to make mention to anybody watching, if you have questions around this topic or any others, feel free just to pop them into the comments and we'll take them in real time. So Kelly, today we're going to talk about onboarding as it relates to the company side of the equation, as well as the candidate side of the equation. We're going to talk a little bit about the current state, what we see a lot of in terms of, some challenges or issues around, particularly, frankly, the company side, and then some recommendations we have on how to fix that. And then we'll focus a little bit more on, as a candidate, how to be proactive and how to also address some of these challenges because, after all, it's a two-way street.
Yep. I love it.
All right. Very good. Ready to jump in. Let's start with, we talked about this last time. So for us, onboarding starts with the very first contact from a company. We're not talking about marketing materials or anything like that. We're talking about either a recruiter or a hiring manager or some person is reaching out to you as a prospective candidate. So what would you say are some of the most common kind of issues, challenges, annoyances that occur from that to, right up to the time someone starts in their job?
Yes. So I would say a complex or a slow process. That's something that comes to mind. I would say lack of communication. So meaning there's no follow-up from the recruiter. Maybe you haven't heard from them for a while. Always very unsettling because you don't know where you stand, what's going on. And also in regards to that, I would say feedback as well. So you're going through the interview process. What's going on? Is my paperwork coming? Do I need to fill out like a background check? The other thing that comes to mind, I would say leader connection too. So being able to connect and follow up, making sure, hey, are you set up? Equipment, are you set up properly for your first day? Do you have your laptop, phone, your access and apps and all of that ready to go? Because I know that's very frustrating on the first day, not being able to set up and kind of have a seamless process.
To your point, yeah, that's something that generally speaking, that should happen prior to your start date, right? Especially now in today's world where we're talking about most of us are in the quote unquote knowledge working space that a lot of people here joining us on LinkedIn are in. We're going to be remote, right? For the foreseeable future, I think still. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And one thing I neglected to mention up to this point is we're discussing this in terms of, this is a job that you're interested and qualified for. I think a lot of times it's really frustrating to get outreach for positions that you're just not at all qualified for. But, let's assume here that you're qualified, you're interested, even if you're not actively on the market, this is something that you're interested in, whether a recruiter's reached out to you or you've applied, right? So to your point, we hear about it all the time, ghosting, general lack of communication, meaning even if a recruiter, like if, for instance, I know that the hiring manager's got other interviews or things have slowed down internally for whatever reason, and we just don't have anything. A lot of times we're afraid as recruiters to reach out to a candidate and tell them nothing, like, hey, here's what's going on. Not really much, but I wanted to let you know, you know what I mean? The reality is that like, that's better than just radio silence, right?
Absolutely. I hate it. And I know people, you just do, you want to know something, even if it is nothing.
Right. Yep. Yeah. So I think to your point, let's kind of transition to, okay, so we know the major issues here, the major pain points: slow or complicated processes, lack of communication, lack of, receiving the appropriate things ahead of a start date once that actually occurs, and a hiring manager that might be somewhat absent from the process. I'm sure there's things that we're forgetting here, but I'd say those four are pretty, those are probably the biggest pain points and some of the things that you and I hear most about right now, correct?
Absolutely. And I would say if we're missing some, like, feel free to comment in there and what you're seeing too, because things definitely change. But yeah, to your point, Scotty, these are like the major ones that people talk about.
Yeah, that's a great, I'll just pause real quick and say, for those of you, it looks like a few people have joined since we got started. We are, so my name's Scotty John, needless to say. I've got Kelly Sanchez, the head of talent acquisition at DigiCert, my biweekly conversation partner. We're doing a deep dive into onboarding. Right now, we're focused on the challenges and what we want to transition now to. And I should also mention, we're focused on the challenges from first contact up until your very first day on the job. We want to transition into some ways to fix this. And just to be clear, we're talking about ways that recruiters and or hiring managers can address these issues, right? So we mentioned the lack of communication, slow or complicated process, an absent hiring manager, and not getting what you need before your first day. What are some, that last one, we could probably say it's pretty straightforward. Just get your people what they need. But for their first day, it seems straightforward. It doesn't happen though still. What about the other things? What would you say are some of the fixes for these?
So how to fix the
the challenges that we see commonly.
Yeah. So to your point, yeah, that one's obvious. Like get their stuff that they need by their first day. Being able, honestly, just to communicate and be transparent with everything, setting proper expectations so they know what's coming. Give them a checklist if needed, a task sheet, whatever it is. So you guys are both on the same page. And again, there's no gray area. The leader connection, I think, is key as well. Like, you want to feel valued, you want to be excited. So getting that phone call from your hiring leader, or a text, or whatever it is, a Zoom, depending on how you're joining, absolutely. I think that is a quick, easy fix. And actually something that should be done. Yeah.
I couldn't agree more with you that the key here is setting expectations. So as a recruiter, believe it or not, those of you watching that haven't been in the recruiting chair before, which I assume is most of the people watching, we sometimes get literally thousands of applications to one job, and certainly thousands of applications if you take into account how many jobs we might be working on at any given time. As a third party recruiter, I don't necessarily get applications, but I've got a lot of people I'm reaching out to at any given time. And so you just have to make sure that for those people who've applied, first of all, quickly letting them know whether or not they're a fit is going to be key. But once we get to a place where someone's actually had a conversation with us as a recruiter or the hiring manager, those are people, I think, that you want to set the expectation of what's going to happen next. But you also want to, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kelly, because you're on the talent acquisition side, right? You're on the business side. Might be harder to do this for you, but I'd say, give them your contact information and invite them to follow up with you when they want to when they want an update, and just make sure that they know that sometimes you're not going to have an update for them, right? It's as simple as that. It really comes down to expectation setting and then communication, right?
Yes.
Awesome. We're getting some great comments here. So just again, for everybody who's joined us, if you have questions as it relates to onboarding, you've got Kelly Sanchez, the head of talent acquisition at DigiCert, along with me, Scotty John. Thanks for joining here on my page for LinkedIn Live. We are doing a deep dive into onboarding. So you don't have to necessarily ask questions about that, but that's the topic today. Yeah. So I think the last comment we got is a really good segue into the next part of this process, which is once somebody starts a job to, 90 days, maybe up to 6 months, right? Certainly most companies have some sort of probationary period that's like usually the first 90 days. So what are some of the issues that we see people face during that time?
Yeah. So I would say, no, again, there's no clear expectations on what is going to happen in the next 30, 60, 6 months or 90 days. It's like, hey, welcome to the company, and there'll be some training. You'll start your job. Good luck. No, no, it doesn't work that way. So the more details that are realistic on what you want to learn, for example, for myself, I want the individual to understand our company culture. So that is a discussion that I'm going to have with them within our first week. So they can get ingrained and used to, hey, these are our values. This is our mission. This is what we are looking at. And I want you to be comfortable with it. So when you're in your role, you understand the lingo and what the company values are. Because if you do it at the 60-day mark or even later on, I think it's a little bit challenging.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, to your point, and it's absolutely it's a perfect segue into the comment we just got from Joe. Joe, thanks so much for the comment. Joe and I are kind of always on the same wavelength when it comes to these types of things. But he just mentioned for hiring managers, having a 30, 60, and 90-day plan to be able to communicate to your new person, making sure people know what's expected of them, but also what are the metrics? How are they going to be measured for success in this role? Mm-hmm. And we'll get into, as we kind of transition to the candidate side of onboarding and what you can do as a candidate to be proactive about this stuff. But again, for a company, it kind of comes back down to effective communication, setting expectations, making sure people know what is expected of them. A couple of, nice touches, if you will, that will really go above and beyond for an onboarding process with a new employee is to find out a little bit about, who they have at home, whether it's a fur baby or a family, a spouse, whomever it might be, and write a handwritten note, maybe a small gift, and just thank that person for essentially sharing them with you as a hiring manager, right? That goes such a long way. It's easy to do. It's not expensive. It's just a thoughtful thing. And so that, alone can often make a huge impact on a new employee that's feeling, everybody when you're starting a new job is going to feel a little trepidation. Not to put you on the spot, Kelly, because I know we didn't talk about this up front, but are there any other little things that you think can be done that first week or a couple of weeks in a new job?
I would say, again, just checking in and making sure that your team members are also checking in on the individual, so they can get different perspectives. So they have different coworkers or buddies that they can go to with different questions as well. So you're creating not connection with you as the hiring leader, but other peers, other people from other departments to grow their network internally. Because yes, you're coming into an organization, you may not know who to go to for certain things, but if you're doing intros with the team members and stuff, then they can direct and really have a support system.
Yeah, it's so funny. I mean, I think you and Joe must be on the same exact wavelength, because right as you started talking about that, he said the same thing in a comment. So it's absolutely true. I mean, checking in, starting maybe a cadence of regular one-on-ones, even before somebody actually comes to the team while they're in the training phase. If you have it like a formal training process, it might even be better because you're going to get feedback on how that is setting them up for success. And, be able to address anything that Joe says, basically what Kelly said.
He's
All
like
right, I love
texting me all of this, just so yeah, I'm reading it.
So I should check in one more time before we transition over to the candidate side of this equation. If you're just joining us, or if you've joined us since I last said this, you have joined Kelly Sanchez, the head of talent acquisition at DigiCert, and of course me, Scotty John, talking about onboarding. We're doing a deep dive into onboarding, and we kind of covered as a company what you can do to create the type of onboarding experience that's going to lead to long-term retention of your people. Now we're going to transition over to the candidate side of things, and I'll tee that up in just a second. But I do want to say, if you have any questions or comments, of course, but any questions at all about this, feel free to drop them into the comments section, and we'll take them in real time. So with regard to the candidate side of things, I guess the only thing I want to just lead off here with is it's a two-way street, right? Obviously you want a company that has a good process for onboarding and makes it a positive experience, but at the same time, this is an interview generally, right? And so there are things you can do, and we're going to talk through what some of those things are. You had a good analogy before we went live, Kelly. How would you kind of look at this as, from the candidate's perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can't take all the credit for it because one of my recruiters shared it with me. So basically, yes, Scotty's 100% right that it's a two-way street. Both parties want to make this a positive experience. So when you're interviewing, you're basically auditioning. So you want to make sure that you are flexible, that you're kind, and all of that, like, again, a positive experience. And so that was the best way that my recruiter put it, was like, hey, you are auditioning for this role. Yeah. And we're here to acknowledge that. So yeah.
Yeah, for any of the people that are watching right now that are maybe appreciate the sports analogy, I know at least one that will appreciate it. It's a tryout, right? You're trying out. So whether it's auditioning for the role, trying out for a spot on the team, however you want to look at it, you do have to put your best foot forward. And so the way I think you summed it up perfectly, Kelly. You want to try to be gracious and give the benefit of the doubt, assume positive intent, and really just, again, kind of always put your best foot forward as a candidate. I would say that the other thing to mention here about it is this interview / application process, this first contact through until an offer comes, this is telling, right? These are data points for you about how the company, and particularly how your potential next boss operate. So let that inform for you some of the questions that you're going to ask, right? You want to be flexible, like you mentioned, in terms of, okay, what am I paying attention to here? What am I seeing? And maybe it's going to inform some questions I have. That being said, what are some questions that you absolutely must ask throughout the interview process, Kelly?
Yes. So I would lead off with, for me personally, and I think it's an important one to ask, is leadership style, because there's so many out there. Some people learn differently, do well in different environments. So that is a question that I would highly recommend to ask. And for yourself, kind of picture yourself like, can I work in this environment and under that leadership style? And not only ask the leader, but also ask the other people in that interview panel, because they will give you different perspective as well. So yes, I knew what you were saying. See, we're on the same brainwave, wavelength, whatever you want to call it.
No, to your point, I think that's so, that second part especially is so key, because the leader is going to tell you, they're going to be on their best behavior, but so are the other team members, right? Generally speaking, but you are going to get a better perspective on how they are going to treat you and how they treat everybody else on the team by asking those other people that report up to that individual. The other thing I would say, there's zero issue whatsoever with asking the question that Joe mentioned in the comments earlier. what are the expectations in this role for the first 30, 60, and 90 days, right? And try and make sure that they're specific and very clear. I think that in terms of, as a candidate, this is a cliche, but it's a cliche for a reason. You're interviewing the company just as much as they're interviewing you. So don't be afraid to, extend the process if you have to get answers to all of your questions. And if you ask that last question that I just mentioned and you get an answer that's vague and not specific, I mean, you can take that for what it is and then make your decision, or you can try to understand a little bit more and really dig in to find out if you're going to be able to, be successful in the role. I think the last thing that we'll mention, because we are running a little short on time. Well, I should actually pause and just say, please drop we haven't had many questions. I don't actually think we've had any questions today. We've had a lot of great comments. If you have any questions as it relates to onboarding, whether what a hiring manager should do or what you as a candidate should do, please feel free to drop them into the comments. But once you actually start in the job, let's say you got all your questions answered throughout the interview process, then you get started. And let's just say, for the sake of this, hypothetical scenario, that you don't have a ton of direction, once you get into the position itself. What do you think is the next best step then?
Be proactive. Ask the question. Don't wait for your leader to come. Tell them, like, hey, I'm kind of lost. I want to know what's going on. So definitely be proactive early, and honestly, anytime that you're needing some direction.
Yeah, totally. I think that word's absolutely key, to be proactive. And if you ultimately find yourself in a position where you're kind of going to be creating this role in some ways, or shaping it to what you want it to be, make sure you take on high value tasks. Don't take on anything that's repetitive or can be easily outsourced or done differently. Like, think of it strategically that way. Take on high value tasks. Try to think in terms, like, the framework you should be thinking about it is, how can I ultimately become indispensable to the company and in this position? Because, being in that place, with some sad exceptions, sometimes they want you just to stay there because you become indispensable. But generally speaking, that's going to set you up for future growth and opportunities to progress throughout, the rest of your career. Hopefully it's a long and fruitful career at the company. I think again, we got a great comment here. As somebody that I think is actually on your team, Kelly, Ashley Stokes, just said she always encourages people to be their authentic selves, and showing up authentically in all communication, right? So great comment. Appreciate that, Ashley. I just want to last minute just say, I think we probably know we're not going to get any questions here, but if you do have any questions for Kelly and I regarding this topic, feel free to go ahead and drop them into the comment section. We'll get to them before we sign off. If not, we'll be back in 2 weeks. Right? We're back.
Yeah.
Okay. We're getting close to the holidays. We'll have to look at that a little bit, but yeah, I think we'll be back in 2 weeks. So same place here on my LinkedIn page, so to speak. If we're connected, you'll see that pop up. And same time, 11:30 Mountain Time on Wednesday. So not next week, but the week following. Kelly, thanks so much as always for joining. Any last minute thoughts or words of wisdom before we sign off?
No, nothing today. Live life. Go live life to the fullest. That's my words of wisdom. Says the girl who's going to be watching the Pac-12 championship game in Vegas on Friday. So I am. I'm going to go check out that Raiders stadium. I'm excited.
Heck yeah, it's going to be awesome. Enjoy it. All right. Thanks everybody for joining us today. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.